Thank you. Ms. Bonamici.
Thank you, Chairwoman Johnson and Ranking Member Lucas. We could use some rural broadband in Oregon as well. Dr. Droegemeier, welcome.
Yeah, good
nice
to see you.
Thank you for being here. First, I want to align myself with Mr. Lipinski's concerns about the cuts to in the Department of Energy to RBE and the energy efficiency and renewable strategy budgets or renewable energy budgets. The climate crisis is an existential threat. And I'm extremely concerned that in your first appearance here before this committee, this Congress, you didn't even mention climate change except for when you were responding to questions from the chairwoman and Mr. Lipinski. You're the president's top advisor on science policy. And with your background working on extreme weather issues, I'm alarmed, frankly, by the administration's failure to take this issue seriously and to fund research on climate science. And I do have a budget question, but first I want to ask a couple of questions, yes or no questions, about something that concerns many of us here as well as many in the scientific community. Dr. Droegemeier, should federal agencies use the best available science to inform regulatory decisions?
Yes.
Good, I think so too. Should agencies implement policies that limit the scope of science that could be used in making decisions, yes or no?
Limit the scope of science. I'm not sure
That
which.
can be considered. Should the scope of science that can be considered in making regulatory decisions be limited? Yes.
Well, I think if it's the best science, it's the best science. Yeah, you just put the best science on the table. Yeah.
And were you consulted on the Environmental Protection Agency's proposed rule titled Strengthening Transparency and Regulatory Science? Were you consulted about that? It's our understanding that this draft supplemental rule was submitted to the Office of Management and Budget for interagency review. So has OSTP offered comments on the draft supplemental rule during the interagency review process?
I would have to check on that, and I'd be happy to do that and get back to you. Yeah,
Thank you.
absolutely.
I would
Sure.
appreciate that.
Okay.
As the President's top science advisor and in light of OSTP's role in leading interagency efforts on science policy, are you aware of any larger federal efforts to limit or otherwise censor science?
I'm not.
Yesterday, there were news reports suggesting that the Interior Department will soon release a proposed Promoting Open Science rule, which appears to have a similar objective to the EPA's proposed rule. And I have to say, I share the concerns of many. We're deeply troubled by these proposals that would limit the scope of science used in decision-making, jeopardize bedrock environmental standards, and endanger the health and well-being of our community. So I wanted to share that concern.
Thank you.
So, Dr. Droegemeier, in your testimony, you noted that research and partnerships on ocean science and technology are a priority for the administration. And I know that OSTP organized a summit on this issue, unfortunately without congressional participation, last year. Yet the president's budget request would slash funding for the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration's National Ocean Service by 37% and reduce funding for the Office of Oceanic and Atmospheric Research by 40%. I also noticed the concern about the total elimination of the Sea Grant program that's proposed. Last year, the United Nations Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change released a special report on the ocean and cryosphere in a changing climate that found that the ocean is warming rapidly, it's becoming more acidic, it's losing oxygen, and becoming less habitable to the species that reside in it as a direct result of human-caused greenhouse gas emissions. So how do you reconcile those findings of the IPCC and the administration's identified priorities with such drastic funding cuts?
No, thank you for that. So I'm privileged to serve on the Ocean Committee. Basically, it was created with the executive order that the president signed. It's got two primary components and two subcommittees. One is on ocean science technology, and the other is on ocean resource management. So the S&T part of it is really the critical thing, to look at all the aspects of ocean, things that you just mentioned. But also in the summit that we had, it was kind of a multi-sector summit. And frankly, it was the first time really that there was such a summit. So it brought together nonprofits who are investing very heavily in ocean S&T and ocean exploration, and also for-profit companies and the government and the university community. So when you look at all those equities, you look at all the resources. For example, the research vessels that nonprofits like Paul Allen's group is bringing to the table. You know, we partner with them, we get this tremendous multiplier effect. So even though there are cuts to the budget, it doesn't mean that the science research is being cut, because when you partner like that, you're actually leveraging what investments are being made, thoughtfully so, I think, in the government, against all these other folks who have equities as well. And it was an extraordinary event, actually, where people were saying, okay, now we have a direction of where we're going to go in that science technology for the oceans.
And I appreciate the partnership, and I know that solving this crisis is going to require those types of partnerships. However, in light of what we know and what we have learned and how it's affecting not only the health of the ocean, which of course reflects the health of the planet, but also the industries, like our shellfish industry in Oregon, for example, very concerned. Our fishing industry, very concerned about the warming waters, about the acidic conditions. It seems like this would be a time, in light of that recent report, to increase those investments. And of course, work with the private sector,
Right.
but it's not a time to cut. And my time has expired. Thank you, Madam Chair. I yield back.
Thank you.